Andy, how are you doing?
Very well. Thanks for inviting me onto the podcast.
And we also have Simon, aka Cryptic Construct. Simon, how you doing?
Good, mate. Good. Morning, all. Looking forward to tonight's match.
Oh, yes. And I have to thank
Have we lost
Cryptic
Andy already?
Simon. No, he's still there. I have to thank Simon for coming on so that he can help ask some questions of Andy. We're both big fans of what you're doing, what you've done in the past. For anybody that doesn't know Andy, I'm not going to pretend to know his biography and tell you all the details, but you would have seen him in previous Wrexham seasons with the Hollywood, the movie posters. After exhausting all the movie puns that you could possibly do in the world, he has moved on to the audiophile side of things. With if we look at his background and his shelves, we have to pay respect to the audiophile that is Andy. But in his own words, Andy, who is Andy?
Who is Andy? What, do my life story?
Yes, yeah.
Oh my God!
Whatever
really?
you feel like.
Yeah.
God, I don't know who Andy is. That requires deconstruction. I don't know who I am. Who am I? I am a teacher, qualified teacher. I am a Wrexham fan. I am a husband. I am a father. I am local to Wrexham, although don't tell anybody, but I was actually born in England, but by virtue of my father being in the Royal Navy, so it could have been bloody anywhere really. But my mum's from Wrexham. She's from a mining area, which is linked to what I'm doing at the moment. She's from the kind of Moss, Pentra Broughton area of Wrexham. And I am currently self-employed, so I was a teacher for 25 years and I became a head teacher, and I did that for 5 years in challenging schools, and after 5 years I'd had enough, and so I opened my own business which basically does educational provision for young people who are actually too depressed or too stressed or physically unable to go to school. So I have a team of home tutors who provide education but home tuition until they're ready to go back into the mainstream. I've been a Wrexham fan since 1977. My first game was a home match versus Blackburn Rovers. We won 2-1 and Steve Buxton scored a beautiful curling top right corner effort. And that was when the Macron stand, as it is now, was just this ramshackle wooden kind of structure which at any moment felt like it could give away. But that was still the era of foot stamping and literally the old-fashioned rattles that you would... I don't know if you're aware of those. But
yeah, the ones you wind around and they...
Yeah. You know, and it's like an era which seems to have a lot more in common with the black and white world of football than the modern world. It feels closer to that than the modern day. So, yeah, so I miss the promotion years, the 77, 78 kind of time. I wasn't aware of it. I was too young. Supported Wrexham throughout the 80s, for most of the 90s. Always supported them, but then moved away with work, moved away with university and things like that. Met my wife, lived away, and then we came back to Wrexham in 2007 and was back on board from that point to today. Does that tell you who I am?
Yeah, you peeked into so many windows that we need a little bit more from. Me and Simon both have been following. We have another surprise in here. SJ did make it. So let me drop SJ in here real quick, and then we'll go back into the questions. Okay. This is the all-star cast, so we can all get to know Andy better. SJ, are you there? No, you are not. Oh, she lost her earbuds. Hold on a second. So let me just send her a message that we're going to continue talking, and then she could just jump in. This is the type of high-price production, Andy, that you are being subjected to right now.
Well, it's the latest thing, isn't it? That Gary Neville thing with Roy Keane that's very kind of just keep the camera rolling. So I think you're actually ahead of the game.
She walked out on us.
Yeah, she I think she came in and saw Simon was here, left, and that's where we're at.
Simon, if I may say so, you have a remarkable likeness to an ex-British Prime Minister, but you've got to guess which one. It's not Margaret Thatcher.
I bet to say, is it post or pre?
Post Thatcher.
Blair?
No, the one before. There's a John. You look like a
John Major.
There's a John Major about you. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Okay. I'm definitely on the other side of politics. I'm definitely not on the John Major, Margaret Thatcher side of politics, but I know.
Shame you look like him then, really.
You've been catching flack for years because of this.
To look like John Major. I'm glad I'm not in England if everyone thinks I'm going to be bloody John Major.
You could be a John Major impersonator, couldn't you?
I'm going to be there in a few months. I better change my look. I'll get the mo going or the beard or something so I don't look like John Major.
Or just say your last name is Minor. And then
John Minor. Yeah.
Yeah, John Minor.
John Major Minor.
SJ, welcome in. Of course, like we discussed before, we have Andy here. Andy, SJ,
Hello.
Andy.
Hello.
Can you hear us? Okay.
Hi.
Yeah, I can hear. I lost my earbuds. It was like right around the house, and then I stuck my hand in my hoodie, and I was like, "Oh, this is from last time." They were like,
"Oh, so I wasn't supposed to read the message that said, "Oh, Cryptic is here, so I'm not."
Yeah. Sorry.
Okay. Fair enough. Andy, you have been doing these walks, and for people that aren't aware of what the walks are, where they came from, why you're doing them, could you give us a background of what it is and what you're doing?
So first of all, why the Miners' Rescue? I was aware of the Miners' Rescue. I'd never stepped foot into the Miners' Rescue. In fact, I didn't even know where the Miners' Rescue was. It's quite tucked away. It's very close to the ground. It's literally just down a side street. It's a 2-minute walk from the turf. But unless you go down the road where it's at, you wouldn't know it was there. And I was aware of its presence. And then what really grabbed my attention was the robbery they had just, I think, soon after Christmas. And I started to read up on it a bit more. And what caught my attention was I liked the way they had 1 foot in the past and 1 foot in the present and the future. And in terms of the past was obviously the mining heritage. And that resonated with me because my tide was a miner before his particular pit closed, and then he went into another heavy industry, into the steelworks. We used to have an enormous steelworks in Wrexham called Brumbo Steelworks. So there was that link with the heritage. And I'd done some work on Gresford before as a youth theatre leader. We'd done some kind of workshops around it. And I also live on top of where the old mine used to be. So my housing estate is literally where the pit heads used to be. Wow. So there was always these links in the background, which makes kind of sense now why it resonated with me. But what particularly caught my attention was the fact that the Miners' Rescue offer art, and my background is very much rooted in the arts, and not the value of arts in terms of creative expression, building self-esteem, understanding who you are, empathizing for other people, etc. That's been very important to me throughout my whole life, my whole career. So for me, it was the perfect combination. So a few weeks after the robbery, I went incognito, really. I just thought I'm just going to pop my head in and see what this place is about. And I was really surprised by what I found. It was a real kind of hidden gem from my perspective. Lots of other people knew where it was and was frequenting it. And there was just this remarkable artifacts there in terms of from the old rescuers, because obviously, as you know, it used to train rescuers who would go down into the pits and do that horrifically dangerous job. And there was a cafe there, and the minute I stepped foot into the cafe, I'm not an overly confident person, so I was a bit out of my comfort zone going in on my own. but I was immediately struck by, and I can't articulate it. It's too abstract for that, but it was just this incredible sense of this is a really lovely place. The spirit of it. I can't articulate it. It was just a vibe. It was friendly. Everybody said hello in an unobtrusive way, just hello, and I just felt very much at home there. So I like to keep my things going in terms of having purpose. I like my job. It's my job. I enjoy the students I work with, the parents I work with, and so on. But it's a job. I like to keep myself busy with other kind of pastimes, hence the posters and stuff like that. And I thought I want to give something back. Maybe I'm getting to that stage of life where you suddenly realise you've taken for 40 or 50 years of your life. And I think it comes to a lot of people, and it's about time you gave something back. So I thought, what can I do? And I enjoy walking. I've always found it really good for my mental health, and it's my meditation, if you like. I like walking alone. I like putting my earphones in. Don't often fancy it, but God, when you get back, you don't half feel the benefits from it. So I thought, let's do something with walking. And clearly, obviously, with the strong association between the miners' rescue and the Gresford disaster, I thought, let's do something around walking. So I haven't got time because of the job to kind of go to Kilimanjaro or do Everest or anything like that. So I thought I'd got to be a bit realistic about it. So I thought I'd do 53 consecutive 5-mile walks, because I think 53 times 5 is roughly 266. It certainly was at the time of conception. I hope I've got that right. So I thought, why don't I do 1 mile per victim of the disaster? So when I finish the walks, it will have totted up to 266 miles. But I thought, well, it's not very challenging, is it? Because I do a lot of walking. Who's going to support 5 miles of walking every day? So I thought I'd up the challenge level by kind of basically crowding out my own time. So first and foremost, I'm going to do some films, and I'm going to explore the Gresford disaster history, and I'm going to communicate that on the walks. And the other challenge I wanted to bring in, which I have to be honest, I mean, I shouldn't really say this because I'm still in the process of trying to attract funding, was to do the same route and see if I could drive myself mad. I'm not driving myself mad. I thought, I'm 37 walks in now, and it literally is the same route from the Gresford Memorial Wheel, which is literally 30 seconds walk from where I am now, my home.
Okay.
2.5 miles, a perfect 2.5 miles. That was a little bit of serendipity. 2.5 miles to the rescue centre, 2.5 miles back. There's my 5 miles.
Wow.
And that was essentially it. I thought, put it out there, see what happens. Eat More Chips podcast picked it up, and I was able to articulate it on that. And I just thought, well, just give it a go, really, and see what happens. And seems to have, I tell you what, the cardinal mistake I made was my first week of walking, I was on school holidays, so I had the week off. So, of course, I've got so much more time there. So I thought, oh, great, we'd get music in the videos. Because originally I thought, I'm just going to say, I was paranoid about, how am I going to verify this? How do people know I'm doing this walk?
Right.
So initially I was just going to do, hi, this is the second walk and I've done it. So I thought, no, I need to do a little bit more than that. And of course, because I had that week off, it was like, yeah, I'm going to go on location, going to layer on music, I'm going to do loads of research. And of course, then reality hits. And the time I spent in the half-term holiday, of course, I don't have that time. So the real challenge I didn't foresee. And that was the crafting and the writing and the researching to do the videos. So I think all combined, it is quite challenging now. I know it's not Kilimanjaro. I know it's not Everest. I know it's not the 3 peaks. But it is quite a commitment over 53 days when I've got a family, when I'm holding down a job which is about 8 to 10 hours a day. So I am satisfied now that I have kind of reached a threshold, which is kind of, I will feel a sense of accomplishment at the end of it.
I did see a touch of madness come in on, was it 34, 35? Where am I? Where am I walking? So there's a little touch of madness creeping in.
There was, yeah.
How far ahead scripted are you? Because, I mean, you just And how are you actually reading it while you're walking too? Because that's just amazing.
Okay.
Or is
Well,
that just all off the cuff?
It's not. No, there's a compromise there, but the time limit literally is I plan what's going to happen the next day, the night before. So that adds a bit of pressure. In terms of, I use a teleprompter bit of software, but not to fully script it, just to give me. Things like statistics and quotes from people, which I wouldn't want to kind of get wrong. So I have a loose structure which rolls down with just a little bit more meat where I really don't want to get things wrong. So no, it's not totally off the cuff by any means.
And how are you managing to keep your arms out level without swinging your arms too? Without a GoPro, you're doing it without a GoPro by the looks of it. So
I am. And it's rough, but what I think I've noticed is that there must be some kind of stabilization software in the iPhones now, because I have been aware of kind of going down potholes and thinking, well, that's going to look like an earthquake, and then reviewing the footage back, it's like, where was the pothole? So there's clearly some stabilization software in the iPhones now, which obviously covers all sorts of sins. My arms aren't aching either, so. No, and what I do is, in order to, because if I left the edit to when I got home, I'd be on 3 hours kip a night. So what I'm actually doing as I go along is the rough edit, nothing precise, so that when I get home, I've just got a kind of slightly trimmed clips, just make sure everything fits. So most of the work is actually done on the walk. So I'm fingers crossed, because law of averages says I'm going to fall down a verge, I'm going to get hit by a car. Don't try this at home. I tell you what, being hit by the car might be really good for fundraising. Can you imagine
the mastermind?
The video from intensive care.
Is this an exclusive? Have you just given us what the next video is?
It's too contrived now, isn't it? You'll know what I'm up to.
Well, they're only doing 20 miles an hour now, aren't they? So that they've slowed the speed limit down. We've all seen that. So
no. I know they are not. Now, this, if I may, I have some anecdotal evidence here. Before the 30 went to 20, the roads were calmer. What I think's happened since the 20 is there's just been, from quite a lot of people, a general 2 fingers up to any speed limit, never mind 20, never mind 30. There just seems to be a bit more, it doesn't feel quite so safe on the pavements, to be honest. So I think it's actually swung back, and people are a little bit like, this is so draconian, I'm going to do what I want. Don't get me wrong, I'm not talking about 70 miles an hour and 30 miles an hour, but there's not many people sticking to 20 at all. Far from it.
So I like that you said that you're doing the in-camera editing. For anybody that studies film, there's Robert Rodriguez's first film that he did, El Mariachi, was shot on film, actual film, 35 millimeter film. Since he was on a shoestring budget, he knew that he couldn't shoot a lot of actual film. So you pay for, in the olden days when it wasn't digital, you would have to pay for all of the film, of course, and you'd have to pay for all of the developing of said film. Since he didn't have the budget for it, he shot similar to what Andy did. He shot everything, including the cuts. So he would only film what it was, so that it left just very limited editing to do on the backside, but also saved a tremendous amount of film, which is as opposed to something like Apocalypse Now, where Francis Ford Coppola had 12 cameras going, shooting film simultaneously multiple times, giving the editor Walter Murch thousands of hours of footage to edit down together for one scene. But the faster, quicker way, the quick and dirty guerrilla mode, is to only shoot what you need. And Andy, does that hint to your production background, of your foresight, of the pre-planning of, okay, I'm going to know, here are my constraints, here's how I'm going to operate within them?
No, I am a very rash I don't think things through, and that gets me into trouble sometimes. So
Okay.
I literally just went into this not really thinking it through. So it was like, oh, this is my first walk. How am I going to do the editing? What's going to happen? So I just kind of made it up as I went along, really. But appreciate the kind of like similarities between geniuses you're talking about. But nah, it's just rough and ready just because of time. I'd love to have some high production values, but I ain't got the money, and I definitely ain't got the time.
Yeah, it's absolutely beautiful what you're doing, but I'm going to double on the genius because you had the foresight without even knowing from the examples to do what some of the greats have done. My minor dyslexia has to intervene when you did your calculation of miles. I, being dyslexic, heard it as 265, which I assume was the correct multiplication of 5 times 53. Simon saying yes.
I lost all that. Sorry, I froze.
Oh, okay. Well, so Andy, don't worry if it freezes and you miss something. Just ask us. We'll repeat it. But the beauty of this software is that it records to the cloud from each person's camera. So in the back end, we won't get any freezes. So when it comes back together in the post production, we won't get any of those lags. But if you do miss something, just feel free to have us ask again.
Okay,
so if we had 4 cameras around Andy on his walk, we could have this going around his walk and have 4 of us walking with him and getting multi-views, and then we could hook it all together.
Then we'd really get hit by a car.
No one's having any of my side profile. It's not good. No. My front profile's not much to write home about, but you're definitely not having my side profile.
It's in the writer.
Yeah, it's not happening.
Needs all green M&Ms. Also, no side profiles. Production over side profile. Is that?
Yeah.
Well, so if you can give us an update of how things have been going for you, where you're at right now, and if anything as far as the motivation or the reasoning, has that changed at all or evolved, or has there any doors or windows opened throughout this process?
The motivation has just got greater because of people like Simon and anybody who's liked, reshared, commented, obviously donated. And added to that is I'm going into the miners' rescue on a regular basis when I do a half day on a Friday. So I've just been there for 3 hours today, sitting in the cafe, speaking to people, doing some footage so the motivation just gets greater as we go along. So no problem with motivation. One thing I didn't foresee was the personal impact on me. I just thought I was going to do some research and communicate that across. But of course, what has happened is I've become incredibly immersed in my own town's history, which by all admission, I knew about the Gresford disaster. Of course you do. Coming from Wrexham, coming from anywhere in Britain, maybe overseas, you've maybe heard of the Gresford disaster, such was its scale. But I think without getting too profound about things, I think things like identity, things like I will never be able to walk these streets and look at them ever the same again. I know where the victims lived. I know where the survivors lived. I now know where the bodies are because they didn't, obviously when you get to the pit bottom, the Gresford pit would extended for kilometres into the surrounding fields under surrounding estates 1.5 miles, 2 miles away. I never knew where the bodies were. What I now know is that where I grew up, at my bedroom window was overlooking, it was literally 200 metres from where the bodies are entombed. There's a very nice restaurant in Wrexham called the Pantarockin, which interestingly I've just found out today is something to do with the dip of, it's not misery, it's a word like misery, dip of misery. I don't know when it was named the Pantarockin, but the bodies, one of the explosions happened under this very well-known country pub, a restaurant in Wrexham. There is no indication there. There's no bench with a plaque on. There's nothing that would tell you there is lots of bodies underneath. I don't know whether that's very, very good for business. And that's one of the things I've noticed. Sorry if I'm going off in a tangent, but
Go on.
and I felt this yesterday. You get inside stories, you start to have people online saying that was my grandfather, or my grandmother was on the pit head while they were waiting for news about what was going on underground, and you suddenly do start to have a connection, albeit a very, for me, incredibly far removed. I'm not pretending for 1 minute there's any blood ties I didn't. But the film I did last night on John, who was colloquially known as Jack Lewis, and he's the only guy they were able to get out. He was a rescue worker. Now, of course, in the 24 hours from the explosion, there was a massive rescue effort, and there were a handful of dead bodies recovered. Of course, they couldn't go back in there for months because of the fires that were burning. And they were pouring 25,000 gallons of water every minute down there to cool the pit, to extinguish the fires. So in the film yesterday, which dealt with Jack Lewis, that was 6 months after the disaster, and it was the first time they'd been down there. And just getting immersed into his story was beautiful and tragic. But I suddenly got a massive drive because I found out where he was buried, to go to a local cemetery about 1.5 miles from here and track down his grave. I'd never been to the graveyard before. It's in a place called Gresford, about 1.5 miles from me here, about 2.5 miles from the ground. And I'm going there and I'm thinking, I hope this is a small cemetery. I hope there's literally 50 graves and it's going to take me 5 or 10 minutes to find this grave. Well, of course there was. There was about bloody 1,200 gravestones there. So after an hour and 40 minutes of walking around, I couldn't find it. And what I realised was I was utterly deflated by that, because I almost had this need to see that man's grave. I don't know what that means. I don't know where that comes from. And if I feel like that, then the fact that we have a memorial wheel, which, by the way, took a lot of campaigning to get the mine closed in 1974. It wasn't until 8 years later that was constructed. There is nothing in the fields under which the miners are buried. There is nothing. So if you're a blood relative or a very close friend, as you would have been in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, where do you get that connection from? If I feel it in 2024 with no blood ties to it, how must it have felt for the relatives? And that slightly frustrates me. The memorial's lovely, it's peaceful, it's in a slightly incongruous position because it's surrounded by car washes and social clubs and a big roundabout. It's no heaven there, but there's a little corner cut out of it and it is very peaceful. It's like a peace garden and it's nice, but it still doesn't take you to where the bodies are. And I find that fascinating in terms of how people were able to process their grief. Did a little bit of research into the psychology behind that, and it can lead to some prolonged issues with bereavement and so on, because you don't get those cultural traditions of being able to bury, to do what the loved one would have wanted. You don't say goodbye, and you can't go back and necessarily have that conversation like you would do if there was a grave or you'd put somebody's ashes somewhere. So that's exercised me yesterday, and yesterday's film was the closest I came to having to switch the camera off, because I did feel so emotional about it. Up until that point, I've been quite stoic and I've got a job to do. I just want to communicate the information. I want to do the miners justice. But yesterday, that was the closest I came, and it all because of that guy. But that's a phenomenon. I don't know what was going on there.
Well, on behalf of my late father-in-law, who was a mine rescue officer, I'd like to thank you for the effort you're putting in for that, because you're doing some great work highlighting them and what happened. You have had some morose and difficult stories to tell, and you have told them very well, but I did like you reading the letters from the people who made the donations and the people who wanted their sack back, please.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And I thought, when I first read that, I thought, how miserable. And then I thought, no, that was indicative of the time. You know, and when you look at it like that, in terms of its social context, it was actually quite a beautiful thing to ask for, in a way. It's such a historical line in that letter, which said everything about the austerity of those times.
Yeah.
Yeah. And my son's funny. Somebody said to me, it wasn't my son, it was one of my students. They said, "You don't smile much on the videos, do you?"
You're supposed to?
Precisely, and I left it at that, and I just kind of did a side glance and left it at that. But no, I don't smile much in the videos, and I've had my cap surgically removed, and as you can see, I actually do have hair.
He's like, you're not asking people to like and subscribe. What's going on?
No.
You're not saying, hey YouTube, it's your boy Andy.
No, I used to work for Lego, which was the easiest thing to sell in the world, right? And unbelievably, here's a bit of trivia for you. Before they moved to Windsor, where they're based now, which is just outside London, where their theme park is, the principal, the only HQ for Lego in Britain was in Wrexham.
What?
Is that why you moved back there, was it?
It's precisely for that reason, just to be around plastic bricks. But I mean, it was a great company, a Danish-owned company. It was like working in a rainforest. It was so ahead of its time. I've lost my thread now. I don't know what I was talking about. Lego. How did I get onto Lego? I don't know. Sorry.
It was a good riff. It was a good riff. It
was a good bit of trivia, anyway.
I have to double back a little bit with that processing the grief with like basically being denied the opportunity. This is something that like, what you're doing now obviously has tremendous value right now, but I wonder when about in time somebody could do what you're doing now just because of the way that the local establishment handled the disaster and being able to talk about it, being able to people to process it, to identify the spots. There's been a lot of people throughout the history who have identified different parts of the disaster, where bodies are, where the explosion took place. And like you said, there's not a lot of, commemoration of here lies this or that you would see with most disasters and most tragedies that occur on the scale that it did. As you're doing it, do you feel like a sense of obligation now to not only do you have to finish it no matter what, but an obligation to help provide some closure for people who are out there who's lost family members, whether they were grandparents or, step grandparents or in-laws or something like that, that help them have some type of closure in this process?
I never thought for a moment in those terms, ever thought of that. And going back to being somewhat kind of circumspect in my way of doing things. But it was very soon when you start to have interactions, whether it be in the miners' rescue or on X, you realise there are still lots of people out there who are not far removed from it. 1934 is not a long time ago. So suddenly the responsibility hit me, little things like, what if I miss a name from the final roll call after each walk? What if I get somebody's name wrong? And accidents and mistakes, I'm sure there are mistakes in there. Somebody will know I've made mistakes who is much more into it than I am. So I can only hope that, and I know from some of the interactions I've had, people are of the opinion, and I'm grateful for them letting me know that I am doing those men proud. And that's not come from me, that's come from other people, and I'm absolutely delighted to accept those comments, because that's I never thought about it going into it, but I became very aware of it very quickly, and then to hear that has settled me down a bit. To know that has given me confidence.
I think coming in as an outsider, a little bit of an outsider, has helped you to maybe open those things up, because when you grow up when you grew up, you didn't know and you weren't aware of it. I live in a town here that's got the oldest asylum in Australia, some of the oldest buildings in Australia, and the locals wouldn't even want you to look at it. the outsiders have come in and said, do you know what you have here and what you should be highlighting? And I think you're doing the same. Hopefully the town in the next couple of years will take up your mantle and put some memorials around, put some chairs around, let people know the history. It is distressing, but people need to know it, and it needs to be available.
I think what's important to say is there are people like the North Wales Miners Association Trust, which is, I sorry if I've got that wrong, which is run by Alan and Margaret Jones, that they have been doing this for decades. I'm interviewing them because that will be the perfect opportunity to have those loose ends tied up and go, I couldn't get anywhere with that. What was the sense behind that decision? Why did it take exactly 8 years before the memorial wheel was erected? Why isn't there something on some land to say underneath these fields are the miners? They are the experts, and there are others out there. I am nowhere near that. But I kind of quite like you say, Simon, just kind of coming into it almost a bit ignorant about it, because I feel like I've kind of learnt as I've gone along with everybody else who's watched it. It's a little bit raw, and I'm finding out things as I go along. And but there are people who are far more informed about it than I am. But I'll tell you what there isn't, and that's an awful lot of historical records. There are inquiry documents, there are a handful of testimonies. The one I was referred to yesterday by Parry Jones it's a tome. It must be, you can get it as a PDF online, but as far as I'm aware, there are only 2 texts that have been written on it. One deals with the letters, that's their focus. It's called the Gresford Letters, and the other one is called, by Stanley Williamson, called Gresford, The Anatomy of a Disaster, and that for me is the seminal text on it. But it's surprising. I mean, there's quite a bit online, tidbits, little, summaries, but it's pretty much the same information repeated over and over and over again. There's not an awful lot out there, I would suggest, considering the scale of the disaster itself. So I don't know. I've often thought, without trivialising it, it's got everything you need for a film. Everything you need in terms of the political, the cultural, the personal, the family. It's got everything you need, and I don't know whether that is slightly a bit of sacrilege, really, because part of me kind of believes that would maybe risk cheapening it. I don't know. I'm not comfortable with that, but it's got all the ingredients of a bloody good movie.
Would it be a better documentary or a better better fiction?
Yeah, I'd say so. Yeah.
Well, you have movies like Hidden Figures that came out not too long ago, and it's a scripted, live action, not documentary style or biography style, and those can be powerful, if done well and they have the care and the intention behind it. And in a story like that, you're not going to be booking, okay, let's get our Marvel superheroes to play these parts because they're going to carry the story by them being likable. This is a story that is more about what happened and the impact to multiple people instead of just like a superstar coming in a box office, Ryan Reynolds is so-and-so. It's, I think that if it's done by the right people, it could be great. But also, I mean, how many things have we seen on war that are scripted, World War II, but then also they released the, World War II in color. You can have them both. You wouldn't have to have just one. You can have them, and like what you're doing is almost a background, like a behind the scenes of the story that could be supplemental. So the next possible question is, has the Welcome to Wrexham team reached out to you yet for season 3 or whatever?
No, and that absolutely doesn't bother me at all, because this is not my thing. Turning a camera on myself couldn't be more grotesque to me. I gotta be honest though, I am starting to enjoy it. But that terror I felt inside, first of all, because putting yourself out there is risky. I want a quiet life. I don't want to invite mockery. I don't want to invite kind of criticisms that I'm getting this dreadfully wrong. So that was a scary moment, that first one for me. But then, of course, people get on board and people encourage you, and that's made me grow in that particular function of delivering to camera. And I am enjoying it now, to be honest. I am enjoying it. So yeah, in terms of that, I never saw anything it would do to me at first. I never considered that, but it's been great for connecting with people. I met Jay, the Upper East Side Hawk, on Monday. Mm-hmm. I'd have never met him. I'm meeting Ruby Slippers on Sunday. Not to mention all the local people I've connected with as well. So, and the people in the Miners' Rescue. So this rather private, quiet, reserved individual has suddenly increased his network as well. So it's been great for me personally as well.
Yeah, and I guess we could pull back the veil. Yeah, we could pull back the veil a little bit with Ruby Slippers. Jess is part of a group that we're part of that we chat together on WhatsApp. That's amazing, the ties that you have on multiple levels of people across continents that you are putting together, and all for a very, very good cause, a very admirable cause. And I think anybody that has suffered any type of loss in their life can relate to needing not only the closure, but needing the discourse that exists out there that for some of us in our lives, we don't process that well on our own. And to be able to be vicariously through somebody that is going through those steps, going on that learning process, it's an absolute pleasure. And I'm sure that there's people that you are impacting that you might not ever hear from. They might not ever say, like, hey, you actually helped me throughout this time, helped me come to terms with X or Y, because like you, that fear of putting yourself in front of the camera, there's a lot of us that have tremendous feelings that we still just keep to ourselves. So the impact that you have and the thing that you're doing, it's a beautiful thing. And I just have to thank you for what you're doing and continue doing, because it's absolutely amazing.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
How is your body taking it? Are you getting through them quicker? Are you finding yourself less sore in the morning?
I from a very early age, I've considered sleep. My body's fine. My body's absolutely fine. I'm tired, just mentally tired. But I'm going to crash when it's over, because from an early age, I've often found sleep a waste of time. Life is, to be here at 51 and to say on 99% of every day I've woken up, if it's 6 o'clock and I've had 4 or 5 hours sleep, there's a day to be had, and there's things to do, and there's things to enjoy. I've never been one for lying in, so there'll be times when I'll do a walk, do the edit, and start to plan for the next day, and it's 2 o'clock in the morning. And then I know I've got to do a 6 o'clock leave because of my work pattern that particular day. Not yet, and I don't think it's going to happen now, because I've pretty much broken the back of it. 37 out of 53, another 15 to go. I've woken up excited, and what more can you ask for to wake up feeling excited? So it's purpose, isn't it? Purpose.
What comes after?
I don't know. I'm a bit frightened, actually, because I'm gonna sink into this kind of despair and isolation, aren't I? And go, what's happened? What's the point anymore? You know, I could have a conversation with my wife. I could ask my children how they're doing, how school, you know. I guess I could do those kind of things. No, I don't know, but something will come again. But you know, I'm thinking there's definitely going to be something else, and it'll definitely be about charity, and it will probably about history as well. I mean, I noticed Jessie Ruby Slippers was waxing lyrical about the British chip yesterday, and I thought, hey, there's the next one. There's the next one. A 53 episode expose into chip.
Wow. Wow.
Why not?
It's what the world needs.
Have you thought of combining the videos into one long video and putting it out as a long form? Is that possible?
That'd be great.
Yeah, it's happening behind the scenes, not through me, but there's a guy called Colin who does it's Wrexham Sport and Music. It's got yellow. You might know it. He does a lot of does lots of footage of Wrexham games, but lots with the Declan Swans, lots with the Rescue Centre, lots with live music happening in Wrexham, and that's happening in the background. It is going to be made into one. It's all going to be put together essentially, and I have been asked if the Miners Rescue can use that for education, because Scoot from the Declan Swans does the education at the rescue. And of course, I absolutely said yes. Please, do what you want with it, really. So yeah, that is going to be available. Yeah, but it'd be very long because it's already 37 times 5. I don't know the maths there. 200. It's already 200 minutes with 13 to go. So it's going to be about 4.5 hours worth of content when it's over.
I guess you could edit some of the walking out, but certainly the information you provide, that needs to be, you do a great job with that, so that needs to be there. But and maybe some of the magnolias, you got some great pictures of magnolias in bloom the other day. But no,
I'll tell you why that is. It's because when you've done the walk so often, what more can you film? I've started stopping at puddles. There's a puddle. I've not done a puddle yet. Oh, there's a fence I've not filmed yet. You run out of things to film. So yeah, the magnolia was attractive, I have to say.
Oh, and the daffodils too, to show that it's spring. Whereas here we're going into autumn. So to see the daffs coming out, it's like, okay, they're hitting spring now. Hence the walk into spring.
Absolutely.
It's on the other side of the world. So those shots you are getting some very good shots. So maybe you're a cinematographer without knowing it.
I teach film studies.
Hey, there it is.
And drama. Yeah, you don't like being in front of a camera. So
No, I was in front of the camera when I did present a BBC documentary in my younger years when I was only 19, 20. It was a BBC One documentary on addiction, which was ironic really because I then became addicted to everything after it. But this podcast's not about that, is it? It was meant to put me off, but it didn't. It did the opposite. And that TV series actually won a BAFTA award.
Well done.
No, not for me. It was for the whole. There was like six episodes in there. So
you were part of it, so
yeah. I was a part of that. So I have been in front of the camera and I hated every minute of that as well. So but here I am again. So there you go.
I like the analogous nature towards your approach to the day-to-day coverage, where it's so similar to just everyday life, where every day, if you're going to a 9-to-5 job or whatever it is that you do, you approach that and it could get monotonous. You can lose the drive and the spice for life, but that perspective shift that you had, that is that positive nature, that creation nature, where you're going to look at it and see what beauty you can find. And it's so analogous to, we punch a clock or we go about our lives on a day-to-day basis. And if you are just aimlessly going through, it could lack purpose. But if you have purpose and you have drive and you have something that you're looking for, you find beauty in puddles that could, for somebody else, it could be monotonous, but for someone, it could bring them to tears for the beauty of something that is so seldomly seen. I mean, for me in the desert, if I saw a puddle, I'd be like, this is amazing. This is absolutely,
Well, I'll do more puddles for you, Ron.
more green things, rain, water, don't know what that foreign substance is. More of that, because we lack that.
You'll be okay then, because I don't think that we've seen much sunshine. There's been a couple of sunrises, but other than that, it's been very grey and drizzly. It's not been horrific, the weather, but it seems to be constantly, very frustratingly. One of the things that has irritated me about the videos is the wind buffer. So sometimes it can be a bit coarse and a bit abrasive. That's the way. And then when a bloody car goes past you, that plays havoc with the sound levels. That's irritated me retrospectively. If I did it again, I would have got maybe a buffer mic with a big furry thing on, and just pinned it to my lapel or something. That has irritated me. But it has been rather bleak. The late winter, early spring weather has been bleak here.
It definitely matched the mood. And I think as you're walking into spring, and hopefully the mood lightens as you're talking about the future rather than the past, that will all work in well. If you had one of the kids walking behind you, quiet filming in process, with a little sign on the side of the road, please don't honk your horn as you're going past, type of thing. So,
yeah, good idea.
Take another route. Don't go this way. Yeah. So there, you talked about maybe when the conclusion of the 53, starting something else. What is the significance of 53? Of why that number?
Purely because when you multiply it with 5, I'm gonna do the maths. Hang on.
Okay.
I'm scared to death now. This is going to be so embarrassing if it's going to come out 267, isn't it? 53
it won't be
times
number.
5 equal. Right, okay. We have a problem, Houston. It's 265. but I'll be honest with you. I have missed a name off the roll call, and I was absolutely gutted about that. And I know the name, and I'm not going to repeat the name. But what I'm actually going to do is a 54th walk. Oh. That will then obviously take it to 266, but it will be purely devoted to that man who I was so remiss at missing off the list, and that will be my way of kind of apologising for that oversight, really. So there will be a 54th walk, but it will be a personal thing, and I will make a film of it, but it will just be dedicated to that guy at the end of that one.
The wheel that they're talking of putting outside the new cop, is that the one that's currently at the Gresford Memorial that you start at, or is it another one?
There's multiple wheels, I believe, right?
There are. I think it might. I don't know, and I'm not going to hazard a guess whether it's the second shaft wheel. But when I looked at the footage on the documentary, I didn't recognise it being local to Gresford. It could well be. It was only a little nook and cranny they showed, wasn't it? It could be somewhere there. I don't know. So, in truth, I don't know.
But it won't
be the Gresford one.
The Gresford one, yeah.
No, they won't. I'd be very surprised if that was moved now.
Yeah.
How fitting, though, as well as the process that you're going through, and then you missed a name, but not. I wouldn't say not to your fault. Within what you're doing, there's been, I guess, such a lack of transparency for so many years that what you're doing is in spirit of trying to right some wrongs that are out there. So I think if anybody should be given some forgiveness, it would be you for like the hard work and dedication and love and care and compassion that you're putting into it, that you even have the foresight to double check the names to then right a wrong. I mean, the whole process of what you're doing is, in a way, righting wrongs that are out there.
That's a really nice way of looking at it. Really nice. Yeah. I mean, that makes me feel better. Thank you, because I was going to reveal that at the end, and and I just hope. I tell you one thing. I just hope there is not a close link to that name, but it will make it better when I do it, and more so because those 5 miles will be dedicated. But the politics have hit hard, and the frustrating thing. I don't necessarily want to get political, but you can't avoid becoming. I guess it's not politics; it's more social structures and the way society has been structured for way too long. Really, and they're not lessons we're learning very quickly. It's very frustrating to cover this disaster and look at where we are today. And don't get me wrong, we have moved forward. Of course, we've moved forward, even if we're just looking at health and safety and work, which drives people mad, and people have got plenty to say about that. But then you're reminded of what it used to be like, and you understand why it is like that. But you look at the there's lots of echoes with COVID, and so, I don't know about what it was like in your countries, but in Britain there was the championing of bus drivers, train drivers, frontline workers, paramedics, and more. And maybe just for a moment we thought perhaps there's going to be some redress here and some more value. Of course there's not.
Yeah. No.
And so you're seeing these same systematic structural issues repeat time and time again. And I look at the political landscape and I see nothing, I see no one, I do not see the will to change it. And that's frustrating because you want to learn something from something like that, don't you? Of course you do.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
But we haven't.
No. Well, we had a mine collapse in Australia the other day and one man died, one man severely injured. So it still happens today. It'll happen again tomorrow. You know, while life is cheap and there is value to be extracted from the ground, men will die.
But not just men underground. You know, all those kind of services I talked about. And I have to say, at the time, and I upset my wife, but there was this tradition here where you'd go out at 8 o'clock on a Thursday night and you'd have a pan and you'd hit a wooden spoon on it. And as somebody who works in the public sector, I am absolutely in line with nurses, police. They are my workforce. We're basically cut from the same cloth. I refuse to do it because sadly I knew it was a gimmick. I knew 6 months after the pandemic was over, they would not get the pay rise. And that's not any disrespect to the nurses. I just thought I'm just not going to fall into that. So I didn't.
Yeah, it's just a gimmick, wasn't it? If you're not actually going to pay me or respect my job, don't be out there banging your saucepan.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know the saying, art is never finished; it's abandoned. I'm going to put that upon you as what you're doing and what you're creating. Not only the charity aspect and the goodwill aspect, but the process. You know, you are creating an art medium for people to enjoy. When it comes to the conclusion, how are you going to, I guess, stop and move on? And this is the end of this for you, because there's got to be an emotional attachment that you build every single day that you do it and that you're a part of it.
And I think I have a sense of where that's heading, but until I get to the very end, because there's a massive chapter still to come here. The work on the actual Gresford disaster, as you may have picked up, is coming to a close, which leaves 2 weeks of films. So now I turn my attention to the miners' rescue, and what I've already seen there today. I met 2 volunteers there today, Sue and Mervyn, and I had a profound 10 minutes with Mervyn on his own. I interviewed both Sue and Mervyn about, why you volunteer, why is it important, what do you see here in terms of benefit, what would happen tomorrow if this service was removed. Mervyn's story added another element to that emotional attachment because he is the son of somebody who died in Gresford, but not in the Gresford disaster. And that's a key thing here because, of course, a disaster of that size is always going to eat up the columns, is always going to eat up the history books. But when you add up all the other little disasters around the local areas here, they are probably higher, the death toll. And the Miners' Rescue are doing something absolutely beautiful. It's a piece of work they're going to be developing in the near future called The Forgotten Miner. And that recognition that we cannot just merely talk about the Gresford 266. What about all the other guys in the proximity of Wrexham, which would have died in their hundreds? And this guy's father died when he was 6 in a singular death in the Gresford mine, and then his grandfather was horrifically injured in another mine disaster. And we have a man with me today who has grown up in a generation where he could not express his feelings being a man growing up in the 60s and the 70s. And a man, Mervyn, and he won't mind me saying because he's very honest about his feelings, you'll see the film once I've had it approved by them, is a man who's very emotional on camera, who has to stop at regular intervals And you suddenly start thinking, and I'm just speculating, I'm not reading, I'm not deconstructing Mervyn. I don't want to get that wrong. I don't want to misrepresent him. But I listened to Mervyn today, and I listened to the trauma he's gone through and experienced firsthand, and I can feel this unresolved, unreconciled well of emotion. And to be able just to sit back and just let Mervyn, it's a little bit what were you saying before, Ran, about just bringing the subject up gives people the opportunity to maybe exercise some of those ghosts, for want of a better word. And that was good. So going back to the question, there's too much of the journey still to go. But what I do know it will obviously be lessons learned in terms of what, from my perspective, about the disaster, about what it says about society, what it says about Wrexham, and what we've been built on and what we are now in relation to that, what it's done for me personally, the people I've met, the generosity I've come across. It will be a full stop which reflects back on everything, but I think there's still too much to go yet for me to have totally formulated that, because I think the next chapter is going to be much more uplifting, because it is about the great work they do, about the friendships, the connections you see there on a daily basis, the great work Dragonheart are doing there now in one of the rooms, the mental health work. So many plans for the future. So that it's going to feel a bit optimistic. And I definitely think this whole idea of walking into spring is not an accident. Appreciating that we must never forget, but we must always still move forward as well, which is the significance of the title. And I don't know about you, but it's my favourite day of the year. The March 31st, when I do my last walk, is when the clocks go back. So we hit daylight, and there'll be something significant about that in that last video as well. But it always rains here on that day. You think it's going to be gorgeous sunshine, and it's just as dark as the day before because it's so overcast generally.
Oh, well, that day means I need to get up 2 hours earlier because we put our clocks forward 1 hour. So you go back an hour, so I'm going to be up at midnight rather than 2 a.m. I'm glad to hear that the miners are doing the forgotten miner or the unknown miner, because so many died from black lung. They didn't die underground, they died above ground.
Yeah.
And now we're still getting that. We're still getting that now with the stonemasons and benches, kitchen benches, and now silicosis from that is amazing, killing men in their 30s because they're breathing in that dust. So the workers are still, unfortunately, still ununionised, and they're dropping below those 25% marks that you were talking about. And the care factor for the worker, it seems to be getting less and less rather than more, unfortunately.
My own tide died of emphysema so I say I haven't got a blood link to Gresford, but I have absolutely a blood link to mining in Wrexham. And he was 60 when he died, and he was 7 when I died, and I never once saw him out of his armchair not attached to an oxygen bottle with a mask over his face. So you're quite right, Simon. It's not just the miners who died underground in horrific accidents, but and in some ways, beyond the violence and the horror, there is something even more painful about that. If you are carrying 25 years, 30 years of immobility and emphysema and bronchial disease and cancers and so on, that in some ways is kind of harsher. That's a life sentence, So absolutely right. It's so important, that forgotten miner.
Also, the families, the surviving members that had to go through the loss of, within that time frame, the man being the main breadwinner, and absolutely devastating generations of people. The fallout from it, the impact, and especially when you put the political nature on top of it, of the denial of any wrongdoing from the mining company, and that the surviving family members that were now desolate weren't getting the relief and the help that they needed. And that has that trickle down in a bad way of people growing up without a family member, but then also growing up in more adverse and poverty because of the situation.
Well, you say there was no relief provided. There was I think the equivalent of 33 million pounds was raised, and relief was provided quite quickly because obviously what they needed cash. So poor was so many of the families related to the Gresford dead, they needed cash in the moment. And it came, considering the administrative burden of such a task, I think from what my understanding is, the Disaster Relief Fund acted quickly, and there was always going to be controversies because you'd put in claims, I'm appealing for this from the appeal fund. There's always going to be no's, and I haven't gone into that really, but there were upset people who didn't get what they felt they needed. But I think on the whole people did. But there was a really weird thing that happened, because the stipulation from the Disaster Relief Fund was nobody can be better off than they would have been had their husband still been alive, or whoever the breadwinner was. So a ceiling was put on it, which when you think of it socially, and the fact that it wasn't until World War II in this country, which empowered women in the workplace, and quite right if you said, well, hey, just because the war's over, don't think I'm going back into the kitchen. We're still talking about the 30s, where there was not really a job market for women. So to put that ceiling, I guess I can kind of understand it on one hand, because listen, this is what your husband was earning, and we will provide that, and you can't knock that. But yeah, it was a funny little kind of thing. You cannot be any more well off than, or well off is the wrong word. You cannot be any less poor than you already were, or whatever.
Yeah. Jeez.
The inquiry, was that under like a 75 or 100-year Official Secrets Act, or has everything that was there come out publicly?
I know there is the Parliament have archived everything. So if you want to find out about a question that was asked about Gresford, you can go to Hansard and you can find those questions, particularly from a guy called Stafford Cripps, who would go on to be Chancellor of the Exchequer, but as a young lawyer represented the miners and the miners' union. He fought very hard and was very instrumental in the nationalisation of the mines, though so taking it out of private pit owners where there could have been just that utter drive for profit. He was very instrumental in that. The inquiry is there for everybody to see. The full report. You only have to tap in the Gresford Disaster Inquiry and you can read it yourself. So I don't think it was subject to any form of secrecy whatsoever, as far as my research shows, and I think I would have come across that. No secrets.
Well, yeah, and I got to thank you, Andy. This information that you've given us today has been like absolutely just not only informative, but filled with that care, compassion, and love. You can tell where your heart is, and it's in there for a good reason, and really helping educate us, people not in Wrexham, but also the people in Wrexham, paying them the respect and the homage. Before we get out of here, what is the I guess not next thing that you're going to do, because we know you're still doing it, but what is the place that people can tune into, the at on the social media that they can follow along and take part, and we will also link in the link to the charity as well if you want to touch base on those.
Yeah, I'm just on X. I do have a personal Facebook account that I'm uploading the videos to, but it's X, and it's the same handle as it was for All Gone Hollywood and All Gone whatever it's called now, Sonic Iconic or whatever. What is it? God, I should really know this. What is this? It's here. Hang on. It is at iconic _ ironic _ at iconic _ ironic _ and that's where it's all happening.
I wanted to ask, there's a fundraiser event going on at the end of April that I know is a benefit for rescue miners. Do you know if there's going to be any tie-in, or have you anybody asked for like a tie-in? you to?
I don't know. What I don't know about the fundraiser.
Oh, well, I'll send you a link on it. It's a little dinner benefit that, and I think Bill from Dragonheart has a big part in organizing.
Oh, Bill Long.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. I follow Bill, so I've just been so busy with the walks. I've kind of not just kind of touched base with social media much, other than get the video up and obviously respond to people engaging directly with the videos. And that's not great, really, because in an ideal world, I think the more you engage on X, the more your own profile improves. Is that true? Somebody mentioned it was. So it's probably not good that I'm not, but I just literally have run out of time to just kind of scroll through and to be quite, I just haven't had time. So I'm really sorry that I've missed that one, especially as it's from Bill.
I would say you're probably the benefit that you're providing in doing these videos has much more of an impact than having even if you're you're uploading them to Twitter and then not engaging much after that. I think the impact of just that one video every day that you're posting, it has a lot of impact. I see it reposted and people having conversations about it. And so I don't know, you may not be on much, but it's definitely
great to know. Thank you.
Yeah, and thanks for bringing that up, because contractually, Bill is still under contract, so he has to watch every one of these episodes that we put out. So he'll be watching this for sure. So Bill, get on it. You have work to do. Get Andy involved in there. But yeah, thanks that we've taken a good amount of your time. We're fighting against your hours of sleep that you desperately need to function and give us that great of footage and journey that you are on. Andy, I just have to thank you from all of us. Thank you so much for providing what you're doing and the ongoing work that you're putting in. You are an incredible person, and thanks for coming on and sharing with us. It's been an absolute honor. SJ, Simon, any closing words before we head out of here?
I just want to go for it, SJ.
Oh, it's okay. I just, it really resonates with me what you're doing and your commitment to filling in that information and highlighting the different minors individually. My father died when I was little, and there wasn't anything really for me to associate with that. And where you have mentioned that the miners don't really, except for the memorial, don't really have individual places to go and have closure. And I know on Welcome to Wrexham, one of the ladies, her father, she had mentioned that, that the need, that really deep need to be able to associate and have a specific spot. I know that I felt very lucky throughout my life that I did have a place to go to feel closer to my father, and I can only imagine it's got to really impact and be really important, I think, for the different family members and friends of, we talk a lot about family members having, the impact of loss, but it resonates through friendships. It resonates, that loss resonates through the community. And I really just appreciate that what you're doing does provide closure, possibly, or provides more information that people can kind of reach out and have stories and have something, to treasure and feel kind of more, maybe hopefully a little more sense of completion.
Yeah, well, hopefully. Thank you. Hopefully.
I'll just add on that and thank you for your art. The art, the movie posters, the record album covers, not enough Australian stuff in there for my liking, but and the art of this movie that you're making. Yeah.
Thank you, Sam. But I will promise. I mean, it was only Kylie Minogue is your only pop expert.
Hey, Jason Donovan, mate. Jason Donovan.
Of course, she did a duet with Kylie. I actually used to like that song when I was in school, especially for you. I think I fell in love to that song actually when I was about 13. But no, I am aware there's some great Australian bands. Your big favourite is who were the guys who did Midnight Oil, Beds Are Burning.
Yeah,
great. In Excess.
Yes.
Oh, the Vines. The Vines are Australian.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah,
We had
more
some
recent.
amazing pub bands until unfortunately the pokies took over the pubs and kicked all the music out. So we no longer have that proving ground anymore.
Yeah. Wow. Unbelievable. Can I thank you guys as well for giving me this opportunity, and for the questions have been so interesting to get into. Really deep, in-depth, kind of insightful questions, which have been really interesting to answer as well. It's an hour and a half. It feels like 5 minutes. So thank you. It's been a tremendous experience, and you seem like such lovely people. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Andy, and a big thank you to Scott Morton, who has introduced all of us together. A great guy, and without, we wouldn't have got to know you, Andy, better, and so have to give a big thank you to him. But the pleasure is all on our side. That this has been absolutely amazing. We'll have to, as the journey goes along, if you have the time in that busy schedule, come back and give us periodic updates or a conclusion, etc. But we will link in everything so that you at home can follow along Andy's journey and get better acquainted with the miners' work within the tragedy within Wrexham, within the area, and getting to know Andy a little bit better. That this has been amazing, and I guess the last thing, I have to thank you, as we're all in the brightness of day, to honor the mining experience. You shot this in a mine, and we have to appreciate that.
I've just realised I am actually sat in the dark, aren't I? There's a tribute to your questioning. I didn't even realise I was in the dark.
Yeah, that is your planning. Just as you're planning to make it to spring and to follow the ups and downs within the journey. But yes, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you guys.
SJ, Simon, everybody, have a great day, and we'll link in everything. As I think maybe this time when we end, and it is definitely Up the Town, but I'll add a new one that I've never said before, Up the Miners.
Yeah, absolutely.
Up the miners. Go and introduce yourself to your family.
Who?
Let them know.
Go let them know you're still.
The other people in the house. The other people in the house there.
Yeah. I will do. Thank you. Thanks, guys. It's been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you,
Andy.
Have a great one.
All right. Thank you.